Before we get started, wanted to just really quickly introduce Client Success. Many of you know us for our content, for our community, for our events, but we also are a software provider. So we are a customer success platform. We help scaling teams better manage their customers from new to renew. We'd love to share more with you as you scale your team, as you're looking to have better reports and visibility and a true system of record with automation and AI that can help you scale your team. We would love to get to know you and would love to chat with you. So please reach out. Without further ado, let me introduce Jeff Beaumont. So Jeff is formerly with GitLab and has been a big part and very much an expert in customer success operations, support, scale, everything, from setting up the first time to how do you make a team and technology more efficient. We're excited to have Jeff today. I will hand it over to Jeff. As I said, please come into the chat and the Q&A with any questions. And Jeff, I will go ahead and hand over to you and let you share.
Awesome. Thanks, Dave. Good morning, everyone. Let me get this set up. All right. Everyone should be able to see my screen. And if not, I guess complain. So let's talk about a couple things here. I think we have I think we have a problem, and that has been that over the past few years, we have lost the plot of what we're trying to do. We've become scattered. It's been hell for many of us. We've been reactive, not proactive. And it's creating undue stress. It's hurting our results. And I'm here to suggest a different path. So again, I'm Jeff Beaumont. I formerly led CS operations at GitLab. We grew ARR from 72 million to over 550 million while I was there, from 830 employees to over 2,000 today. So what you should hear in that is not like, oh, this Jeff guy is a smart aleck and knows a bunch of stuff, but really that I've made a ton of mistakes. That's really the takeaway here in a short amount of time. And I'm here to help you hopefully avoid many of those mistakes. So today we're going to discover a framework for how you can apply in your companies ways to mitigate risks, take more opportunities, be clearer with your presentations, and have a better picture of what great looks like. So let's use a framework to frame our work. And let's talk about a story. Let's talk about the story from the last 12 months. See, going back to that reactive piece, we've been reacting for a long time. We're all smart, we're all talented, we're all driven. We pride ourselves on being proactive. It's not about intentions or motives or anything like that, but it's the causes. We've had all these externalities affect us. We've had COVID, we've had layoffs, we've had constantly replanning our fiscal year, and plenty of fear on top of that. Fear of these things happening again, fear of other things happening again. And what do we get from it? How many fiscal year replans did we do? I know we did at least several. And that was before we were even a couple months into the year. So here's what happened. You have a recipe for all of these different things of the COVID, of not excessive churn, but a lot of churn, layoffs and all these things. We become frayed. We become at our wit's end. We're exhausted. And if maybe not for everyone, maybe some of you are flying on cloud 9. And if you are, I want your reality because that's way better than mine. But we're afraid because of this constant yo-yo effect of, okay, we're going this way, then we change, then we change, then we change. We don't know where we're going and we lose sight. We lose direction. So, but what if we had a map? And by the way, these are a really fun map puzzle if we want to talk about that in Q&A. But when we're putting together the puzzle, what if you knew what you were building toward? This constant replanning and replanning and replanning is similar to putting together a puzzle, thinking that we know what it's to look like, except we're mistaken. So, have you ever tried to put together a puzzle without knowing what it looks like, without having the front piece of the puzzle box tell you like, oh, this is what it's supposed to look like? That's super hard. So we've lost the plot because we don't even know which puzzle is ours. Better yet, with all the replans and constant change, it's more like we've dumped multiple puzzles into a pile and are trying to make sense with it. And that's something that can work well with Legos, where you pile a bunch of Legos together and then you kind of build something new. It doesn't really work with puzzles. So what are we covering? What are we trying to solve? Which problem is our problems? I've led CS, customer success, and customer success operations teams, so I'm going to speak from both. We're coming to this session with different questions, and here's 6 different questions that I came up with of what we might be trying to solve for. It could be who owns what. It could be what is operational effectiveness? What's the charter of a CS team or a CS ops team? What are the pros and cons of CS ops? Maybe we're operating from a scarcity mindset and thinking I can only afford one part-time person and I got to make them do 30 different actions because we're underwater, right? So maybe we're already overwhelmed and we're already pulling out our hair thinking that there's too much. And then to further complicate it, you can think of CS ops in a number of ways. And this exacerbates the puzzling puzzle. And it's frustrating, but it doesn't have to be. See, we all have the puzzle pieces. The CS ops strategy not only helps the CS ops team, but adds considerable value to the CS team and the company. And so before we attempt to fit them together or try to put together the outer pieces of the puzzle, let's know what to build so that we can build from what we know. So I found maturity models helpful to understand not only where we're at today, but also know where we've come from and where we want to go. So the very beginning will often be where we do it on the side. So let me just figure out this tool after dinner. I've been there when I was a director of CS, and we were implementing a CSM tool. This is about 6 or 7 years ago, and I didn't have an ops person. I didn't have anyone I could just hand this off to. So I would do my normal director of CS role from 8 to 6, go have dinner with the family, and then that night go, okay, now I got to figure out how to use this thing. And you know what? If you're there, that's great. And honestly, for many companies, well, not the working excessive hours part, but if you don't have someone on some ops person, that's fine. You don't need to. It can be someone where you're the director and you do the tool implementation, or you're a CSM and you have like a split schedule where you do some customer management and some ops work. So the next question is, oh yeah, and there's a poll. Take a look. I'd love to hear everyone's perspectives on that. So does your company have a person or team dedicated to CS ops? And yes, no, and kind of, or the Facebook status of it's complicated. But that next piece, that your first ops manager, the next phase is that, and that's generally one person to do it all. We can kind of poo-poo that idea and say we need more, we need more people, but even one person adds significant value. We're going to be tempted to have that person do enablement and operations and system implementation and data governance and fixing data quality gaps in our CRM or whatever it might be. But even one person adds significant value. So don't knock it, just start somewhere, and that's fine. That's good. The next piece is as you expand into that next phase, see, we have system/tool support. Think of tools and system support. So Zendesk for support, client success for CSMs, there can be other tools. This can be one person or it can be a team. And then that next phase is dedicated enablement. So I think we've all been there where we get to that point where we say, oh, wow, we have a bigger team or we have more of a need and we actually need someone dedicated to enablement. It no longer works to have CSMs just kind of create it or to try to do it on the side. But you'll hit that point where your CSMs, your support reps, renewal managers can't handle it on their own, and they need seasoned guides. It is
Jeff.
like, hey, yeah, go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, as you're talking about the from the first ops to a little bit more of the middle section here in the maturity model, and I'm showing the results of this. Does your team have CS ops? For maybe the no category, which was 36%, or the it's complicated category, which was 18. You mentioned one person or one thing. What are some practical examples of what you've seen where, okay, if one person can even dedicate half their week to something in CS ops, what are some starting points that you've seen work well?
We'll get into some of that in a few slides, but to give a couple ideas, one would be any system or tool maintenance. One would be anything where maybe you have to fix or resolve data quality issues or create a process. It could be documentation. The problem here is I can list out 20 different things, and then that one person would get overwhelmed with trying to manage 20 different things. We're going to get into a process here in a little bit of identifying what are your top pain points and then creating a process to address them. But if I had to give an answer without knowing about the company, I would say probably along the lines of tool and system support, data quality management, because if our CRM data or CSM management tool data is not good, like no one trusts it. So I think that's probably at least a start. And then from there, probably like help supporting the CS leader in designing processes and making sure this is how that whole process works. And here are the other teams you might need to loop in.
Perfect. Thank you. We'll look forward to your other diving in on that.
Cool. Thank you for the question. Okay, so then lastly, this is the last piece of the puzzle. So the next phase is that strategic counterpart. So they don't necessarily need to be a director, like a director title, but you want someone who can drive large scale cross-functional programs. Some of the things that they might do is devise headcount. We're coming into for many of us, we're coming into a new fiscal year. So what's the headcount that we need? What's the role design? We have CSMs, or we have support reps, or we have renewal managers, or we have all three. How do they all function? How do they all work together? You might need to develop operational strategies and to think about what does the future of CS look like at our company 1, 2, 3 years from now? Where do we need to go? What are the needs? What is sales up against? What is finance thinking as well, and incorporate some of that. So lastly, this very last one is getting to a fully functional strategy with digital CS. You have full-blown ops, enablement, strategy, analytics. And it's not like this isn't intended to be like utopia or perfection. It just means that as a company grows and has 1,000, 2,000, 5,000, 20,000 employees, you can have all these distinct teams. But the more important part in all of this is that you would have a partner in strategy or operations who can challenge you, the CS leader or the CS manager or the VP of CS, or whatever role you might be holding. But it's having a partner in strategy and operations who can challenge you, who can sharpen you, and helps you think more critically. And so what if they guided you instead of just reacted to your request for that report that you asked for last Thursday? Right? That's the distinction. And then lastly, on this model overall, so we can critique it. Please do. Absolutely. Please critique it. It's not perfect. But one thing I want to make sure that we're not walking away with is that we don't walk away from this feeling inadequate or feeling shame. We should not walk away from this thinking like, oh my gosh, I don't have it together, or oh, I don't even have this, or I don't even have it as a side gig, or I feel so far behind. That's not the point. We're all on journeys. We're on journeys in life, journeys in our career, journeys in companies. The point is to celebrate our progress, have a realistic understanding of where we're at, and then to be able to make progress forward. So keep that in mind. If you're feeling shame looking at this, that's not the intention. The intention is for you to be able to look back at what you've done already, celebrate those wins, celebrate those victories, and say, okay, what are some ideas that we can implement or we can think of in 2024? Okay, so now getting back to what do we do? Where do we start? This gets back to your question, Dave. We're going to hone in on this quadrant of the mission, key characteristics and critical actions, strategy and structure, and core responsibilities. So mission. First, let's use GitLab as an example. So what's the point of CS Ops? So for me, I'm a fervent believer in making our customers successful so we become successful. That's the whole point in customer success. I believe in customer centricity, not just because it's what sells, but it's also how we should treat humans. So actually to refine that further, it's not that we should, but that we could. We have the opportunity to love those around us. So here's a list of questions that you can ask yourself. So what's the point? What does your support CS team need? What's the future vision of the company? What if you had a strategic partner to help shape your ideas and dreams? So these questions on the right should then feed into your CS operations mission statement. It'll help you refine, what are we really trying to solve? What are we really trying to do, beyond maybe just say, hey, we want to create a great customer experience, or, oh, we're here to support the CS team and whatever they need. We should refine it, and we should make it more, and we should be able to also keep in mind that, hey, we're not just order taker, or a CS ops team shouldn't just be an order taker for a CS team, but one, again, going back to that strategic director, of being able to challenge the CS team, to be able to say, hey, that's a really good idea, what if we refined it, or what if we tuned it this way or that way? Okay. Next, what are the crucial characteristics and critical actions that your CS ops team needs, and that they drive and that they live out? So what do you expect out of them? So if you want, this is where a seasoned CS ops leader or a sales ops leader can help you refine your expectations. What are you expecting? And you can go to that sales ops leader, the CS ops leader, and say, hey, we're building out this team, or we have this team, or I'm thinking of changing, I'm thinking of hiring, or I'm thinking of expanding it and taking on this other thing. What have you seen that works? But why does this matter? Because as we set the ops team, the CS leader should be setting the ops team vision of saying, hey, it's not just helping me, but it's also challenging. It's also helping us see around the corner and what we need to do. um, the CS leader and the CS ops leader need to know what to prioritize, not just in terms of projects, but how they work together, right? Like we want a commonality, a common language, but also a shared respect for one another. So a key distinction is that CSM, and one other thing I should mention here, a key distinction is that a CSM has a list of clients to service, and that's repeatable. An ops person tends to manage data, implement systems, develop new processes. Every day is different, and you need to establish the routines, and if you will, the values you expect from them. It's not simply like going through your top 10. As a CS ops person, you can't just go through your top 10 clients and say, okay, are you happy? How are you doing? Are you going to renew? That's a list of questions that we can think about for our customers, not necessarily for processes or data management. Okay, next, this one's a little bit more philosophical, and hopefully I don't lose too many of you, but also I think this can help challenge a lot of our thinking. So AJ Agrawal wrote a powerful book called Prediction Machines back in 2016, in which he talks about the relationship between data, prediction, judgment, actions, and outcomes. So for CS, I translate these to data and inputs, like where we collect the data, maybe your CRM, you're inputting, here are my customer calls. The processes and operations. So this is where uh, I'm developing a process for how often I call my customer every month or every year, or setting up an EBR or whatever it might be. Analysis and decision support. This is where we look at that report and we say, oh, we're seeing churn pop up here, here, and here. Let's either do further analysis, or let's create an action to combat that churn. Action, and then outcomes. So the idea is that as data becomes cheaper, prediction, or process and operations, becomes more valuable and usable. Then judgment, or analysis and decision support, becomes more valuable in turn. So the important takeaway here is that you have a framework for how to frame your work. See, if you can see your work in this framework, it will forever change how you perceive customer success in SaaS. For instance, I think we know this one well, the cheaper your data gets, the more valuable AI is, which makes your judgment more valuable. So think of ops as improving your data and operations, which lead to better decision support for you. After all, don't we want those outcomes of increased net ARR? And then lastly is core responsibilities. This is the 4, and we're going to come back in a slide and put it all together. So core responsibilities. So a CS ops person doesn't have a book of business like we talked about earlier, but they do have their core responsibilities. So even if your CS ops person is you working from 7 to 10 p.m. at night, remember, it's my story from earlier, then start with your top 3 core responsibilities that you expect out of yourself. Give yourself a grade and work toward that. So I'm not saying this is easy, but it's clear. It also sends a message. It builds trust in yourself, in the process, and in your plan. You can clearly communicate what you need, and if it doesn't happen, it's not a surprise. 6 months down the road, you can point back to this and say, remember I said that X would happen if we did not invest in Y. And so in this case, we can go through and we can say, hey, you know what? We're on track for fiscal year planning. It's proceeding as intended. We expect to hit the deadline of January X, right? Uh, Number two, data quality bugs. We are behind. We've had a number of platform bugs come out. It's creating trust issues between our CSMs and our support engineers or technical support. It's creating this problem, this problem, this problem. We need to invest more there. If I share that, then at least it's understood, and a good manager or a good boss or good CEO or COO or CCO will understand, say, okay, what do we need to do to fix that? What do we need to do to get there? And then that's when you can tell your story of, I need this, I need that. We need to deprioritize this other project so that we can work on this. And then finally, CS KPIs. So this is where a lot of CS leaders and finance leaders and generally company leaders are saying, I need KPIs on how the company is doing, on how CS is performing. And so this is where CS Ops can help design those metrics, build out those KPIs, help set the targets, and then help make sure all that is tracked. And then that feeds back into the data quality management piece of saying, hey, we need both of these to work in tandem. So that's how you can communicate core responsibilities. And then finally, once there, you can develop your annual strategy. So here's an example of a strategy I developed last year, and it's available for your critique. So we broke it into 6 categories: people, cohesive CS operation, CS motion, operationalize usage data, expand digital, create a renewal function, and scale up operations. Your mileage will vary, but once you have your mission, your key characteristics, your critical actions, overall strategy and structure, core responsibilities, then that's when I'd suggest developing your functional strategy. For simplicity and reasonableness, please stick to a max of 3. This slide is intentionally full to show what it means when you try for too much. You're more likely to fail when you bite off more than you can chew. And in this case, if I could do anything over again, it would be go back and say, I'm going to stick to a max of 3, and that's it. Otherwise, things break. And it creates a lot of extra pressure on ourselves. It creates pressure on us because we feel like we're going to fail. It creates pressure on the team because they see that we're not going to make it, or they go, wow, that's too much. And then it's daunting every single day. So I'm not saying don't have stretch goals, but I am saying set realistic goals that, yeah, we might need to stretch to that, but not something so over the top. So, like I said, I made many mistakes, and so I want to share that so you don't repeat that. Okay, so here are your takeaways. So if I were your CSM, here are my action items for your customer success plan. And by the way, as we're wrapping this up, put in any questions that you have in chat or Q&A so we can get to them in a couple minutes. So these 4 pieces, these are your pillars for your house, and without them, your house can collapse. Each one is a corner of your house to hold it up strong for your company to scale. So a great way to fail at scaling is to struggle with tech debt. That's why we were talking about bugs earlier, right? Or when we don't make the hard trade-offs and say yes to everything. Oh yeah, I can do that. Yeah, I can get you that report. I'll figure out that thing too. And we've said yes to everyone and everything, and then we crumble. The other one is if we don't take operations investment seriously. So if you want to succeed, scaling becomes much harder to do than to say. So here are your steps. Here are your action steps from this webinar. So before I get there, another option when hiring is tight, and I think hiring is tight for everyone, and it usually is, but I think especially now, and maybe it's lightening up a little bit. Is to get creative with bringing on a contractor. So I've consulted for startups, and then GitLab CS Ops has 4 well-qualified contractors as well. And that's something where you can bring on someone who either has an expertise that you can't find, or where you say, we need help, but we really only need like 5 to 10 hours a week, or we can only afford that. We can't yet afford a full-time person. So what if we did a contractor for the next 6 months and then saw where we were at, or we were able to prove out the need for a full timer? So it can be tough to find the right person. So check with your network. Cheap is expensive. Don't just go for the most affordable, but find what you actually need. But bringing on these contractors at GitLab helped fix CSM platform bugs, aided in Slack response times when CSMs needed something. It took a lot of workload off me and propelled our Salesforce maintenance forward. One of the biggest outcomes was it helped move a ton of the details off the plates of our VP of CS, off me, off others, to be able to focus on where we need to go. And then these can become repeatable patterns that your contractors or ops analysts can take on. They've identified the problems, they've gone through and they figured out, okay, here are the things that we need to keep updating every week or whatnot. And so if you need help writing up job descriptions for any of these roles, CS ops analysts, CS ops managers, or contractors, let me know. Happy to help. And then if you want more information, you can take a look at my website. I'm on LinkedIn, or you can find me on Twitter or X, I guess now. Thank you all.
Awesome.
Dave, I will
Yeah.
turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Jeff. Really helpful. A couple of questions come to mind. I think you touched on something really interesting. Teams may not have full headcount at the moment. The contractor piece was very interesting. You mentioned utilize your network, folks like yourself. Are there particular technical skills, system skills that you look for? How can we help those who are looking for maybe contracted help know who to vet and how to vet them?
There's a couple ways. One is you can go through an agency. There's a number of agencies out there that work well. They tend to be a little bit more expensive than finding someone, so you have to balance that off of your needs versus your appetite for budget. I think if you can, there's a couple of ways. One is, again, talk with your network, and just reach out to some folks in your network and say, hey, have you ever had a consultant before for CS? What's it been like? What's it not been like? Another one is, if you know any consultants, just reach out to them. I think we all, for the most part, say, hey, we're going to have at least, like, we're not going to charge you the moment we start talking to you. So let's just set up a call. And it could be 30 minutes, it could be an hour. Here's what I'm working through. What do you think? Are these, when I say these things to you, does that sound like the biggest problem? And go talk to a couple contractors or a couple consultants. That's fine too. Go talk with other CS leaders as well is another option, is to say, hey, how have you solved this in the past? Have you ever worked with contractors or consultants? So those are three ways that I would recommend if folks have it. And then reach out to me, reach out to other people. Another one would be, if you use a CSM platform like a client success, reaching out to them and saying, hey, we have this. We want to expand it, but we lack capacity from our end. Do you know anyone that can help us build out more playbooks or more of this, or help us evaluate, like, okay, we have all these playbooks, but are they good? Are they the appropriate for our customers? Those are probably four ways now of ways I'd suggest.
Awesome. Another one that came to mind in areas to start that kind of kept coming up as you were speaking, at least in my mind. Often the first area that we go is to get rid of data mistrust. And often that data mistrust starts in CRM because that's often what feeds the CS platform, the customer support platform, sometimes it's tied into usage analytics. Do you ever, for those who are at companies that are big enough to maybe have a HubSpot admin or a Salesforce admin, do you see those CRM admins cross over into CS ops, and how might these teams in customer success pair with that type of person and working together?
Yeah, I've seen it both ways. So if you have a Salesforce admin or CRM admin or whatever it might look like, oftentimes that person is still responsible for, or feels a responsibility for, the data management. Maybe that's not in their job title, but because they oversee the Salesforce architecture or CRM, they do feel that sense of, okay, the data needs to be good. In that, I have seen some of those people move over into CS ops. So a couple ways. a couple ways that I've seen CS ops people come from is either more of the Salesforce background where they did that management and they said, hey, this is fun, and then they were tapped by their CS leader and said, hey, we're thinking about implementing blah, 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 or hey, we need some help with these reports or whatever. And then they begin working with a CS leader and said, oh, this is actually kind of fun. I enjoy this. And because they have a systems mindset and a process orientation, they've actually come over and been a really good add. The other one is going back to that maturity model. I've seen a lot of people in CS ops come from where they were CSM. They understand the business. They get it. They know what a CSM does on a day-to-day basis, and then they get interested and say, "Hey, I want to run a report on how many customers did this or how many customers did that, whatever the thing might be." And then their CSM leader might say, "Hey, we're thinking about implementing, this software, or we're thinking about adding this or that." And they're like, "Oh, okay, well, I'll help." And then they like slowly edge into it, and then they become the de facto expert. So those are two ways that I've seen people get into CS ops. But in terms of how does a CS leader or CSMs are saying, hey, this is really buggy, or we don't trust the data. Um, I think it comes back to, okay, having someone, and again, it could be a CSM, it could be that Salesforce admin, maybe it's a consultant, maybe it's a contractor, and depending on the variation, or depending on the severity of what the issues might be, you might be able to just hire on a contractor and have that person work with the Salesforce admin, and the Salesforce admin passes off a lot of things to be fixed. But is to go through and say, okay, hey, CSMs or sales reps or whoever, what are the problems? Then to bucket those into categories. Maybe it's the data syncing over from this integration is bad, or we don't trust that data, or the data that we dropped in from a data load into Salesforce from this thing was bad, or we don't trust the number of employees. Okay, cool. Categorize what the problems are, and then have that contractor or that Salesforce admin go through and assess, what is it about that data? And then to be able to report out would be the third piece. Not just take that data and fix it, but then to report out probably like on a weekly basis back to the team and say, hey, I've heard this. Here are these things. We've now fixed this, fix this, fix this. If you see any problems, please let us know. And to create that feedback loop, because oftentimes it's obviously important that we fix the data, but for trust building, it's critical that we again go back to the CSMs or whoever we're working with to say, we heard you. We went through, we've identified these things. We're fixing them. We fixed these things last week. If you see anything else, please let us know.
Excellent suggestions, I think, on where to start. Well, listen, unless any more questions pop up in the Q&A, Jeff, we really appreciate it. Would definitely encourage this group who probably is setting goals, looking at budget, thinking about how to do more with your team next year. Jeff has some unique experience in helping you kind of scale those. So would encourage you to reach out to Jeff as those questions come up top of mind. And we will send this recording and Jeff, possibly a version of your slide deck or your framework as part of this for folks to evaluate their own processes as well. Again, check your mail and also our resources page to get that. So again, we thank Jeff Beaumont and really look forward to hearing your feedback on this session and to join the rest of our sessions as part of the CS100 live replay series. So thanks again to everybody, and look forward to hearing more from you down the line and joining with you on these webinars. Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks, everyone. Looking forward to the rest of the sessions.